What's the best case of instant karma that you've ever seen? Used to commute to DC from 40 miles away. Driving home one evening. This dude decides he must merge into my lane now. Beeping and all. He pushes me off the road. The car behind me was a cop. As soon as I was on the shoulder, lights and sirens went on and the dude was pulled over. It was my own karma. I was in 8th grade. I was standing on a bench when I watched some girl fall over in the yard. Started laughing and pointing and then went to lean back onto the fence that was behind the bench. Turns out it had broken off where I was standing and I fell straight through and into the mud. I'm in the Nick subway. A guy elbows me out of the way to get into the turnstile, first yelling vaguely that he has a train to catch. No. Through the turnstile. Turn the corner and there are a few cops set up near a folding table and he gets pulled to have his bag searched. I worked at a grocery store. I was stocking instant noodles on a big sale display. All I had was a cheap small two-step stool. You know, the one with the bar that runs across the top step? Reaching down to the stool from the shelf I was standing on was about 3 feet. I had a 60% chance my foot would land on the top bar and collapse the thing. I asked a co-worker to use his shoulder as a handle as I got down. My supervisor called me a princess for getting assistance. Soon after, he was stocking the 2-liter Coke bottles on a sales display. He tried to get down. He took the 40% success rate jump onto the step. Hit the top bar. The stepladder collapsed. He broke his arm and took down half of the display. I just clocked out and left before they told me to clean up the spilt soda all over the place. I was driving home on the highway during a horrible blizzard at night. The roads were extremely slick and dangerous. I was going about 30 miles per hour. My daughter was a newborn and it was the first time I had ever driven in the snow with her. I was nervous. Some jerk in a huge truck is doing 65. Passing everyone in the slow lane and just being really risky and ignorant to the conditions and other drivers in general. He passed me. And I was like, "You're gonna crash, bro." Right at that moment, the dude fishtails, loses control, and crashes into a ditch. Don't worry. I'm not a sadist. He was completely fine. I know this because I saw him emerge from the truck and do a little angry freakout dance. His truck wasn't fine. That's what you get for endangering others during a blizzard. Driving through Philly in standstill traffic, some shat decides to use the shoulder as a lane to cut in line. The vehicle he ended up cutting off was a state trooper. An instant whoop whoop and told to pull off the highway over a loudspeaker. I couldn't stop laughing. That time I had my shoes stolen. I was 17. Went to a party where there were kids from 2 different high schools. When I went inside, I took off my brand new Nike Air Maada shoes that I had just bought for $140. Hours later, when I went to leave, my shoes were gone. We had an idea of who took them, a guy from the other school, but didn't have proof. I was so sad and so embarrassed. I had to drive home in my socks. Long story short, a week later, Monica, the girl who threw the party, shows up on my doorstep holding something behind her back. Turns out she went to a party and saw the guy who stole my shoes, wearing them. When he took them off after a smoke break, she snagged them. Now, standing in front of me, she reveals my Nikes. She told me the best part was watching him look for them, just like I had, and then leave in his socks. Monica kicks ass. Walking down the San Antonio River Walk. Guy in front of us gets pooped on by a bird. Friend turns to me and says, "Sucks to suck." Friend literally gets pooped on as well. Right at this moment. Asshole kid in middle school kept trying to steal my cell phone. It was a cheap flip phone. But he'd do it just to me off. Our school had a rule that you couldn't have your phone out in class. Teacher left the classroom for a second to have a brief word with an administrator. Jerkus kid grabbed my phone. Teacher came back in a moment later and caught him red-handed with my phone out. She wouldn't believe it wasn't his phone. He got detention. Back in high school I was kind of being a dick to a girl I was friends with. Nothing too bad. Just some friendly teasing. But still. Then I turned around and fell down a flight of stairs. Even mid-fall the karma and the justice did not escape me. At the end of the day in locker room after gym class, this freshman kid who was really popular and always talked a lot of started messing with this guy who was kind of awkward and kind of got picked on a lot. Apparently, they got in each other's way in flag football or something. Awkward guy ignores cocky kid for a while until the cocky kid pushed him. Awkward guy had enough and hit the cocky guy in the face 3 times before he hit the ground. Knocked his front teeth out. As we were all leaving school and talking about it, the overall consensus was, well, that's what happens when you talk that much. My dog tried to eat my sushi while I was away from the table for a second. In the UK, kids wear blazers and ties to school, and a common bullying tactic that jerks used was to run up to kids, pull their ties so they get really tightly knotted. On the bus home, the bus was really full, and I was standing in front of one such bully. He grabbed my tie just as the bus had to brake sharply. He lost his footing and the only thing keeping him upright was the fact that he was holding my tie. He had grabbed the wrong bit. It wasn't knotted. I simply untied it. He fell on his bum. That was the last time I was knotted. In my school everyone had clip-on ties. And because of the strict dress rules some bullies would yank them off and wouldn't give them back. However, some people had proper ones, usually as a replacement for losing them. One of my friends had one and some asshole yanked it really hard. I was working in a supermarket when panicked customer A came up to me and said he'd accidentally left his cash in the ATM and had anyone handed it in. I was about to say no when customer B appeared behind him and said he'd been trying to catch up to him. He'd been queuing behind him at the ATM and saw what happened. So he'd got the money for him. It was £200, so a decent amount. Customer A was super grateful and offered him some of the money, but he wouldn't take it. Customer B then bought a scratch card, scratched it, and found he'd won £5. Not a whopping amount of karma, but karma nonetheless. At a job as a mechanic I got a part that was completely correct except the electrical plug was a different shape. I found out after I installed it. For the record it did plug in. Just didn't have long enough prongs to communicate. I had to order the right part again and take this one off and install the right one. All while only getting paid to put the correct one on. Lost about 3 hours. My co-worker laughed and said bet you won't make that mistake again. Pay attention next time. His very next job he put all 4 tires on backwards. Some tires are directional. Said the same thing to him. I knew I would use it against him. Didn't know it would be that soon. TL. DR. I made a hard to spot mistake. Dude made fun of me. His very next job he made an easy to spot mistake. I made fun of him. My dad told me this story. He was driving back from the shore when traffic got really bad. About a mile ahead, there was an accident that had brought traffic to a crawl. Happens. My dad decides to be patient about it. Others weren't so patient. People began driving on the shoulder in order to get ahead of the traffic. This s my dad off. We all know how this goes. We do the right thing and are punished for it. Whereas these assholes are skipping in front traffic and will probably get away with it. He thought about following the stream of cars onto the shoulder. But he decided he'd do the right thing and wait. As he got closer he saw 2 cops in a parking lot. One cop was directing all of the shoulder drivers into the parking lot, while the other wrote all of those drivers' tickets. He describes it as one of the most satisfying things he's ever seen. I was driving into a construction zone where 3 lanes converged to one. Right at the point it became 1 lane. A car tried to pass me on my right. I slowed down so he wouldn't hit me. But he ran over one of those metal lane dividers. It got caught up in his back right wheel well and went around a few times. I could see and hear it make a mess of his fender. Last I saw he was pulling over to inspect the damage. I banged my knee on the corner for a hotel bed and my husband was laughing his ass off while he was brushing his teeth in the bathroom. As soon as he walks out of the bathroom, his hit his knee the exact same way and I got to laugh my ass off. My boyfriend has a big GMC. And one winter it was really snowy and a bunch of cars had gone into the ditch. As ya do. Because he is a nice guy. He was spending his day off pulling people out for free. At one point, while he was helping someone, some arsehole flew by him, wailing on the horn and flipping him off out the window. He got done pulling the car out and headed up the road in the direction that jackass had gone. A mile up the road, they found him standing outside of his car, which was now plowed into a giant pine tree. Boyfriend honked his horn, waved, and kept driving. Dude just hung his head like a scolded dog. Truly beautiful. Saw a guy in a gorgeous sports car, Ferrari I think, honking and yelling at a pedestrian in the crosswalk. Pedestrian had the right of way and was crossing during the signal. Immediately after they passed, the guy guns it and darts around the corner and rear ends a cop who was in the middle of writing a ticket. There was a truck parked on the street that was just enough to obstruct Ferrari guy's line of sight through the turn. It was glorious. I didn't even see it happen. I just heard the crunch right after he turned the corner. Not instant karma, but I remember in middle school I knew a kid that would go door to door collecting donations for the walkathon and he'd keep the money for himself. He used the money to buy video games with it. One day he loans his friend his game collection. His friend moved away with it. Not instant, but karma nonetheless. My dad kept getting his lunch stolen at work one day. So he got my mother to get the spiciest hot sauce on the market to put on the sandwich. Lo and behold, the guy who stole it was looking red as a hot iron. They fired the guy and my dad got to eat his lunch again. I'll never understand lunch thieves. I used to be a zookeeper. This bitch was making fun of our llama for looking ugly. The llama was a rescue who had corrective jaw surgery. The bitch pointed and laughed at our llama. The llama spat in her mouth. I gave the llama a treat and told her that she was a good girl. Edit. Thanks Yuntownaza. My instant karma llama story earned me my first gold. One time in middle school, this guy who was relatively new at our school was making fun of a girl in our class who fell in the hallway in between classes. Coincidentally, this was the girl I had a crush on. He was a little bit of a class clown and was mocking her, making her look stupid and clumsy. Apparently, he misjudged his footing and while attempting to jokingly ape the way she had fallen, actually fell for real and landed squarely on his back in front of everybody. He broke his arm in the process, passing him by in the hallway. I saw him just lying there, surrounded by adults and staring up at the ceiling, face completely expressionless. He didn't come back to school. Pretty sure he moved after that. I would have too. That a police car rounded the corner just in time for me and a guide to tell them that a bunch of kids had just thrown a firework at the owner of a nearby store. It was literally moments later, and they could see the kids running down the road from where we stopped them. This happened a couple of months back. Young driver in a brand new Merc dangerously overtaking me and others on a single lane. Caught up with him at the next set of lights, 2 lane. Mine turning, his going straight, both with a car ahead of us. Did the universal wind down your window sign and suggested he cool his driving or he will get into a crash. Told me to off. Lights go green. He boots it off the line. Smack into the back of the car in front. Bonnet bent in half. Radiator blown. Airbags deployed. I got out. Checked the other poor innocent driver was unharmed. Gave him my details as a witness. Gave the dickhead driver the old told you so and carried on my way. A guy in a Charger was weaving through traffic and passing at high speed in a work zone on the interstate, and I said to the other person in the car it'd be nice to see one of those assholes get busted just once. A minute later, a state trooper swings out from the tree line on an access road and pulls the guy over. Double fines for speeding in a work zone. By the by. My best friend's mom has always been like a second mom to me. At least since my bestie and I were in 4th grade. This year for Easter, she invited me over for dinner with her family. So I decided to get her a quick gift, which included some dog toys for her huskies, some flowers, a thank you card and a scratch-off ticket. She has always been so kind to me. She even writes the same sweet motherly messages on my Facebook timeline as she does for her own daughters. That's probably why I cried with utter joy when the ticket I bought her won her $1,000. It wasn't necessarily instant karma since she has been good to me for more than 16 years. But she won some money in an instant. In elementary school, all the kids went to the bus stop together. As we walked, one of the 2nd graders ran into a lamppost. One of my classmates couldn't stop laughing. He crossed the street and he was still laughing his ass off and didn't look where he was going. You know what's coming. He ran into a lamppost as well and instantly got laughed at. Was at a show jumping event and a little girl went up to a famous show jumper with her book of famous riders and asked him to sign it. She couldn't find him in the book and asked if he could help her. He responded, "Find it yourself," and walked away. In his final round, after the incident, worth $100,000. First jump the horse stopped and he fell face first into the floor. Not going to lie, I was laughing. The best one was a real effing goon at my school. He got up on the roof of the shed to on kids as they left the shed. But this dumb bully fell off the roof, resulting in a broken wrist, injured wang and humiliation. Asshole swerving through traffic like a maniac in a school zone, and marked police car pulled him over. I was walking to the store with a friend when we were 13. We heard someone yelling at us and turned around to see some kid about 50 feet away. He was yelling and calling us FS and every other homophobic word you know at that age. As we started to walk over to confront him, he did a 180 and started running while turning. Well, he spun around and ran face first into a tree and hit it hard enough that he fell to the ground from the impact. We couldn't stop laughing and hopefully that was enough embarrassments for him to learn a lesson. I'm so late to this party, but this is too good not to share. When I was about 16 and my brother was 12, we lived on a ranch. We had horses, cats, dogs, and chickens. Because of the horses, we had this thing called a lunge whip. It's basically a long, flexible pole with a length of rope at the end. My brother and I were waiting for the horses to finish eating. Lil bro was dragging around the lunge whip. At first, to play with the cats. But then Dick Cheese starts snapping the whip near the cats. Mostly to irritate me. Hey, don't do that. Mom already said that you weren't supposed to. And if you accidentally hit one of them, I'll beat you up. Lil bro looks me in the eyes and says, I do what I want. He flicks the whip once more. And it snaps back and hits him straight on the dick. I have called him Dick Bruise for years. Not quite instant. But my mom came to my city and brought me home to look after me after I was wrongly discharged from acute inpatient care in the hospital. This cost her a lot of money in both travel and lost hours at her job. I didn't ask her to do this, but she is a wonderful person, so she did anyway. Whilst I was home, she had an evening at the bingo with her best friend. And they won over £1,000, which covered the costs she had to spend to look after me. One time I saw a truck swerve to purposefully hit a cat. It was the type of truck that you see where the dude is clearly compensating for something. Huge tires. Lifted. With the testicles on the back edge. Well, he successfully hit the cat. And it splattered all over his truck. And it wasn't a cat. It was a skunk. For all of you asking. I knew he thought it was a cat, or some other small animal. Because skunks kinda look like cats. And no one in their right mind would purposefully run over a skunk. You are right that I am not psychic. The reason I knew he tried to hit it was he swerved on a 2-lane road to hit the skunk, who was walking parallel to the road, not crossing it. After a few days of getting killed at the blackjack tables at Foxwoods, my friend and I spent our last night getting hammered. Went back to the room and decided to order some room service. He ordered. And I went to grab some water from the vending machine. In the hallway were two old ladies. One of whom was having a massive seizure. I had just taken a CPR first aid course a year or two earlier. And just jumped in. Rolled her to her side. Fished out her dentures. Arm up under the head. Had her friend hold her in place. And ran back to the room to have my friend call security to get EMS up there. They got there. And took her away. She was awake and alert as they rolled her off. Next morning. We decided to hit the tables before we left. Not only did I win back all my losses. But I left up about $4 grand. My school was having a bake sale and this girl wanted red velvet cake but only had her credit card. I was paintballing last Saturday and there was a bunch of kids there for a birthday party. Birthday boy didn't like the fact that one of his guests has made a joke at his expense and everyone laughed. So he shot him in the back of the leg from 1 yard away. When walking away like nothing happened. He tripped over a root and landed on his gun resulting in his hopper opening. All his paintballs spilling onto the ground and the end of the gun taking a chunk of skin from his hip. Am I the only one that wants to see someone do something good and then have something awesome happen to them? Karma isn't always bad. I went to a local playground with my sister and her kid and as we walked in the gate, we passed two women chatting. One of them had a baby in a buggy and the baby dropped its toy. The mother wasn't looking so I just picked it up. Gave it back to the kid. And we carried on walking to a bench nearby. At the bench next to us was a woman with a little girl who was about 4. They were discussing something quietly and then the mother said, "Okay. Go on." Comma. As if giving in to the girl. The girl then proceeded to march over to me. Say, "This is for being helpful." Comma. Sticking a gold star on my arm. And then going back to her mother. Gold star. Motherers. I was playing volleyball with a group of my friends a few years back. One of the guys who is just an acquaintance of mine was known for being unreasonably angry. Throughout the whole game he's being a total dick to everyone. Yelling and screaming. Citing the rules and saying everyone is breaking them. Eventually we all had enough so we just unanimously kept egging him on and acting dumb on purpose to fluster him. At one point he gets so mad that he got on both his knees and started screaming. While he does this a lone pigeon swoops by and takes it on his face.